Greetings, dear students. I think I'm going to do things a bit differently this time around. I'll explain in the voiceover. Greetings, worthless shit, wait, hold on, I already did that opening. This episode, which no one's going to watch anyways, is a bit different than most, as I am not actually reacting live to the gameplay. I am instead using it as more of a backdrop while I ramble on and on about a certain subject. Think of this as the world's worst alchemy lesson. So, that basically... I'm also doing this unscripted because I'm dumb as hell. First, for an alchemy lesson, we should define alchemy. What is alchemy? Now, before that, disclaimer. Put that on the screen. Disclaimer. This is not meant to be taken particularly seriously. These are effectively the mad ramblings of some fool who's read some old alchemy text at some point in his life and is basically regurgitating what little information he can remember off the top of his head. With maybe even one source cited. That isn't just, oh yeah, I just kind of know it. With that said, we should begin. But first, how should we begin? Aha! Clearly, we should start at the beginning. And once we get to the end, we stop. Alchemy is, according to me, basically the art of combination, transformation, and improvement. Though other writers and books have described it differently. For example, in a book that I have had access to, titled Practical Handbook of Plant Alchemy from Manfred M. Junius, translated by Leon Müller. I'm not sure what the original language was in. German. Or, no, Italian. And the, whatever. That's not too important, for this. Describes it as being effectively a three-part process of separation, purification, and cohabitation. But that's for plant alchemy. Then we have to get into the idea of different kinds of alchemy. Now, concepts, ideas, and types of alchemy exist just about all over the world. But you'll find them mostly written of in the West, like Europe, with a lot of Christian stuff added in. This is unavoidable if you're actually going to study alchemy in old alchemical texts. In the Near East and Middle East, which is, while it does have some original things, was mostly stuff taken from the Greeks, a lot of it during the Islamic Golden Age. And also alchemy in the East and Asia, normally Chinese alchemy. And I mentioned this in the last episode when I was rambling. I do that a lot, as you can tell here. That it can be broadly separated into about two different kinds of alchemy. In my researches from a while back, it is basically practical alchemy, which deals with physical stuff, potion making, turning lead to gold stuff, and spiritual alchemy, which is more about the refinement of the spiritual aspect of the person. Basically to take yourself a not-so-great thing or being, an imperfect thing, and turning it into something greater through spiritual alchemy. And, as well, Chinese alchemy has something similar. They separate it into internal and external alchemy. Internal alchemy, Nedon, which has a lot of Taoist influence as opposed to the Christian influence in spiritual alchemy. It's basically their version of it, if you were to try and draw parallels. And Wedon, I'm sure I'm pronouncing those wrong, is their external alchemy or their practical alchemy. And you'll see stuff like that tied in with traditional Chinese medicinal theory, which I've done minor study of. Mostly because I was interested in their herbology. And this stuff gets pretty complicated. Actually. More so than I can really delve into here without actually reading back up on the subject and scripting out an actual video lesson. As I said, this one's mostly just ramblings to see how it goes. So, alchemy, of course, has a lot of mysticism tied to it, no matter where you go. And alchemy is basically just proto-chemistry. In fact, chemistry is basically just alchemy with its name changed to make it look better. Kind of like look better and to separate it from the mysticism and mysteriousness in alchemy. I'm saying alchemy a lot, but this is a video about alchemy. I really need to structure my shit better. So, seeing as we're here and I'm just rambling on, let's talk about some concepts. Basically, alchemy. Of course, most alchemists failed in their attempt to find eternal life or turn anything to gold, except through trickery. But a lot of that's because a lot of alchemy and alchemical practices happened a bit before we had access, but before we had atomic theory and such things as that. So you can't really blame them for everything. I mean, they were barking up the wrong tree, but then again, they couldn't see all the trees yet. They weren't all revealed to them, or it wasn't grown yet. A lot of that was due to the lack of the ability to observe things in the universe. Basically, our science gets better the better we can observe things. And alchemy is also very deeply tied to astrology and philosophies. It was in fact referred to as a natural philosophy, which was basically the really old terminology for a science. So, seeing as this game, Potion Craft, is a game that deals mostly with external or practical plant alchemy, effectively medicine except more mystic and magical, herbology, mostly. We should go over some concepts, and as well, concepts that exist in both European and Chinese medicines and alchemy from way back in the when we were doing that crap. For example, the concept of the elements in Western alchemy and medicine and everything. There are traditionally 4, with maybe a 5th, depending on who you ask at the time. With the 4 elements, of course, being fire, water, earth, and air, which make up all things in varying amounts, and possibly a 5th aether, which is vaguely defined, and I can't really define it right now without, of course, preparing in advance a script and topics and descriptions and study on the subject. So, we're gonna skip that for now. In Chinese medicinal and alchemical theory, they have 5 elements. That's because 4 is unlucky. Yeah, that's a cultural thing. With their 5 elements being fire, water, earth, wood, and metal. And they have a whole, like, system about that where each one either encourages or inhibits one of the other elements. And that also ties into their feng shui, which I also have a book on that I should probably get into studying deeper. If this video goes well, I'll shitpost more alchemy for everyone, if you're into that. Tight. Let's see here. And each of these elements, in both East and West, had a flavor associated with it. And I cannot quite recall the associated flavor or effect. They also had such things as wetness and dryness, hot and cold type stuff as well. But I cannot remember exactly which ones fit with which. So that's something I'd have to do in a bit later, if people want it. Now then, practical alchemy. That is the art of changing physical things. For example, making potions or making medicine. By combining things to various effect. Let's say this is a purely hypothetical plant that, say, is a blood thinner and is also a, like, anti-diarrheal. But if you have too much of it as an anti-diarrheal, it will constipate you, and of course it also works as a blood thinner. This is purely hypothetical. Now, you could use that to thin someone's blood if need be. For example, like, hypothetically, this is all purely hypothetical, someone at risk of heart attacks. But it could also get them constipated. What you would hypothetically do would be to use a plant or item or other drug that has an effect that would effectively counteract the effect you don't want, to try to zero it out. This is a concept used... Basically, the idea with plants and drugs and alchemy and old, like, before safety standards medicine, is to try to understand the effects, they didn't understand it very well, of diseases on the body and ingredients on the body, and effectively trying to counteract the effects of diseases, treat the symptoms, and also counteract the effects of whatever drugs they don't want for that. Like, as I mentioned in the hypothetical, you want the blood thinning, but you don't want to constipate the hell out of them either. So you would mix them in proper amounts for the body weight, which was a thing that most people didn't really, do. Which is actually where... the fuck was it called? Give me a minute. It's a certain type of medicinal theory that came about. Basically the one where... I know the word. Homeopathy. Which was actually very useful way back in the day when some physicians would prescribe enough drugs or plants to, basically absolutely kill you. It was an alternative medicine at the time, and it was useful at the time, but now we figured out how body weights and dosages work, so it's not as needed these days. Again, talk with an actual physician before you take anything from this video as advice. I am not a doctor. I can barely read. I'm just a rambling madman. Aha! And you can kind of see these effects in a lot of alchemy systems and games. Like the Elder Scrolls, but it's all really like dumbed down and stuff. And in the Elder Scrolls you can also see a lot of equipment, all of which was actually used for different things. Of course, in this game, you see the Mortal and Pestle, and yes, you do use that for preparing medicines and things in alchemy. It's just crushing things up to whatever extent you want, or to extract juices to use. And as well, you only use certain parts of the plant, or mineral, or animal part, all of which can be used in alchemy and medicine, traditional medicine. And there is also something that you'd probably never figure out what it's used for. A calcinator, which is used to, in Western alchemy, to calcine things. That is, to make white things. They do this by burning it until it is white in the calcinator, which was believed to have some effects in the alchemical process, and it did, in a way. There was also alembics and retorts, which were both used for distillation of the thing, effectively concentrating whatever it is. As well, you could steep plants in oils or simmer them in oils to extract their own oils. You could crush oils out of them. You could make a decoction of herbs by basically just boiling them in a pot, basically what we do in this game, because this stuff's barely concentrated, as a potion, in quotation marks. And it's basically just a lot of, you take plants or minerals or liquids or whatever you have that you want to change, and then you either add things or try to boil out things, normally water you can get rid of, or to sift and separate things, or to concentrate things, all in an attempt to achieve a desired effect, which is normally to, like, create, in the West, the Philosopher's Stone, which had various nebulous effects, and all the books upon which are steeped in mystery and mysticism, to say the least. Oh man, I got like, what, a minute and a half left? About 2 minutes? But that's basically the world's worst rundown of practical alchemy and the rambling on the effects, ideas, and philosophies and thoughts behind it. For internal alchemy, it's the idea of not necessarily making a physical philosopher's stone, but to refine yourself spiritually and mentally and philosophically to make a philosopher's stone effectively in yourself, or at least that's how I see it. Basically the art of spiritual and mental self-improvement to become spiritually immortal and greater as a being and person. Which I'm sure you all could do with trying. I know I should. Unfortunately for me, I'm also extremely lazy and not going to do that, which is where I could probably use the internal alchemy thing. It's a similar concept in the East, except instead of trying to, I mean, they're still trying to become a better person, was basically to become an immortal using Taoist philosophies and Taoist forms of alchemy and internal alchemy. They're, what was it? Neodon, if I'm recalling correct. So they would refine themselves internally and physically. You can actually see this a lot in, like, Xanxia novels and stuff. Oh, or at least concepts applied to it. And it looks like this is about all the time I have to ramble now. So I suppose that if you want more of this, and I'll see you next time. Until then, I need to learn how to read. Toodaloo, darlings.